Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm James Haskell, along with my co-host Glenn Martin. News is breaking here in Baltimore faster than we can keep up with, but we're looking forward to getting right into the new news, and that is the Baltimore Ravens having identified their newest member of the coaching staff and defensive coordinator. So before we talk about who that is, if we like it, if we don't like it, what we expect to see, all the above, take a second, hit the subscribe button. Also, make sure to leave your comments below in regards to the video. Hit the notifications button so you stay up to date with all the news. And, of course, give us a like if you like the video. But, Glenn, we know the guy because he's been here before.
Yeah.
Who is the new old face for the Baltimore Ravens in at defensive coordinator?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Right now, it looks as if the Ravens are targeting Michigan Wolverines defensive coordinator Mike Macdonald to be their future and new defensive coordinator. And of course, he only spent the 1 year as the Michigan defensive coordinator. And before that, he spent 7 years on the Ravens defensive coaching staff, starting as, I mean, it's crazy that you talk about the career rise this guy had. I mean, he started with the Ravens in 2014 as an intern, Jimbo. This guy was an intern in 2014, and then eventually took over, was the Baltimore Ravens inside linebacker coach for 3 years from 2018 to 2020. And a lot of people were saying that, he first of all, he interviewed to become the defensive coordinator in 2018 when Wink Martindale ultimately won the job. And crazy as it is, I mean, he did that at 30 years old, Jimbo.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a guy who's just a couple months older than me, which is just mind blowing to think about. But then, when he didn't get that job, he stayed on. He was the linebacker coach for 3 seasons, and then ultimately goes to Michigan and had a massive impact on their success. I mean, they went from 95th in 2020. Michigan's scoring defense was number 95 in the country, giving up 34 points a game, Jimbo. And then in just one season, 1 year, they went from 95th to 8th. They gave up just 17 points last year. So that's one season of his impact. And just to further that impact, which should get a lot of fans excited if they like what they saw from Odafe Owe in his rookie season, they should really be excited to hear this. Aiden Hutchinson, who was the star defensive end for Michigan, was on, I think it's Chris Long.
Yeah, Green Light. Yep.
Yeah, Green Light podcast hosted by Chris Long, former NFL player who played many years, and son, I believe, of Howie Long, who also played many years and is a prominent member.
And similar position. I mean, know, they know the position very well as far as Chris and Aiden.
Defensive ends. Yep. You're talking, So Aiden Hutchinson, who is the star D end at Michigan, went on Chris Long's podcast and was asked about the impact that Mike Macdonald had on his game. And boy, I mean, if you want to look up the clip, just look up Aiden Hutchinson talks Mike Macdonald, because he was glowing in his review and credited him a lot with the fact that he was a finalist for the Heisman, and he had 14 sacks and 2 forced fumbles, and really talked about the impact that he made in turning him into a relatively unknown player into a Heisman Trophy candidate. So a lot to be excited about here with this hiring. Potential hiring, I should say.
Right. Yeah, I can't wait to see what he does either, based on his knowledge as far as John and Jim, knowing what they want, knowing what they're looking for, and then obviously his intimate knowledge of the Ravens and their defense for years. Just to add to what you're saying, I saw an article in The Athletic, and because I'm not paying for The Athletic at this time, I didn't read the entire article, but the title is enough in and of itself. Who is Michigan's Mike Macdonald? Quote, one of the smartest men in this world. So certainly, having made the leaps and bounds that he's made in the short period of time that he has, it speaks to his intelligence. History lesson, Glenn. The first treasurer of the United States was also 34 years old when he became the treasurer. Another extremely brilliant man who rose leaps and bounds very quickly because of his intelligence. So certainly, I don't think you get that far that quickly without a high level of intellect. And I'm looking forward to what he can do with this defense. I mean, think about what he did with Aiden and what he could turn around and do with Odafe. Think about the idea of drafting Aiden, or even and the guy that was next to him is escaping me. But on the other side of the line there at Michigan, they have another guy who's a pretty good pass rusher as well. It'd be nice to pair him up with Adafe. So,
Mhm.
point being, I'm interested to see what they do. Um, I was sad to see that it wasn't Anthony Weaver, but I'm also very excited about Macdonald because they trust him here in the organization. He's coming home to a familiar place.
Mhm.
What do you see wholesale changes here
That's the
defensively?
interesting part. Yeah, because
And
what
hold on, let me
yeah.
mention this one piece before you answer because I think this is important in your answer. He in that same video interview he did with Aiden,
Mhm.
Aiden said that McDonald brought a lot of the Ravens system to Michigan.
Yep.
And when I hear that, I think of I mean, it's Wink's system, right? Because that's what it's been the past 4 years. So it sounds like that's what he took to Michigan. So in my mind, I think, okay, he's probably going to bring some semblance of that back. That's what he cut his teeth on. He's worked with Wink
Yeah.
his entire career. Wink's been here since 2012. He's been here since 14. So with that being said, do you see wholesale changes?
Yeah, and I immediately thought the same thing when I heard the interview and him bring up that I thought, well, what exactly are the changes going to be?
Right.
And I think the difference is like nobody, I don't think anyone, even the most pessimistic of Ravens fans, would have said that Wink Martindale didn't know what he was doing or that he was an idiot or a fool. I mean, you look at his numbers, and it shows that he was a hell of a defensive coordinator for his
Yeah.
time here. He certainly there was moments where you could criticize his strategy, and that goes with everyone, but the guy knew what he was doing and he was successful in his time here. So what I'm hopeful is that he takes the elements that made Wink Martindale so successful and keeps those great elements, but then tweaks some things, which is what I expect him to do to make it even more successful. And I think the biggest thing is, the things that kind of hurt the Ravens were lack of a four-man pass rush, right? And then the two biggest issues this year were tackling and big plays. And so the one thing I noticed is that not only did he improve the scoring defense in that 1 year with Michigan in a big way, but he also eliminated a lot of the big plays that they were having issues with before he got there. They
Mhm.
averaged 100 less yards given up in just 1 year. They went from giving up 434 to 330 in the following year, and it's not like
Mhm.
the competition drastically dropped. He was still it's still the Big Ten. You're talking about Ohio State, Wisconsin, you're to Penn State. You're talking about the
Yeah.
very best in the country outside of the SEC.
And this isn't a whole new class that he's doing it with. He's doing it with the same
Right.
guys that have been there. Obviously, Aiden was kind of a non-factor in the 3 years before, and all of
Yep.
a sudden he's going to be a top 10 pick, according to a lot of people.
Yeah, so I'm excited. I mean, he's 34 years old. This is what people call and describe as a defensive genius. Now, I think we can both agree though, and I'll ask you your opinion on this, but is this an obvious, like, this guy has plans to be a head coach in this league.
I
So,
was going to say,
whatever he does, I'll love it while he's here, but the more success he has,
mhm.
the more likely it is he's going to get a head coaching job
Well,
sooner,
yeah,
which
absolutely.
is a
But
good problem to have.
yeah, think about this. So Bashadi did this, and all speculation here. We can only use history to predict the future, right?
Mhm.
Bashadi, people know that there's no cap on the coaching staff, front office, things like that.
Right.
Bashadi was paying Eric DaCosta like a GM. He was paying two GMs for how many years?
Yeah.
Because if not, Eric DaCosta would have been gone, right?
Mhm.
And he
Mhm.
told him, "Look, this is the plan." They stuck to the plan. You know, we've seen this for years and years in New England, right? Like when is oh my McDaniel gonna get his opportunity, right?
Mhm.
Um, so I wonder if this is that type of scenario where they say, "Look, we know you're gonna get offers, based on what we think about you and how we project you performing as defensive coordinator. But we want you to be here for the long term and want you to learn from John, like groom yourself. You know what I mean? But at the same time, John is what? He's 58,
Yeah, he's getting
59.
up there.
But I mean, at the same time, John could go well into his upper 60s and 70s, right? So, and that was just something that came to my mind. Could this be? Are we looking at the Baltimore Ravens' next head coach?
Interesting.
Whether it's
Yeah.
John leaving due to retiring or whatever the case may be, or they just part ways, they fire him, right? Like that happens all the time,
Mhm.
even to the best
Mhm.
coaches. So that was another thing that came to my mind. It's gonna be really interesting. I was sad for Anthony Weaver, I thought he would have done a really good job, but I'm glad we got this guy back on our staff one way or another because I think he's going to strengthen it. And look, he's been a linebacker coach. Obviously, he's helped Aiden. Maybe he can do. I mean, not that Queen is a bum, but maybe he can do something to bring out what we want to see in a Patrick Queen. Maybe he
Yeah.
can do something there to help bring him along. Obviously, he'll be able to help bring Adafe along. And I wouldn't be surprised the Ravens draft or invest some early draft capital on those edge rushers as well. So I'm with you, though, Glenn. I don't see wholesale changes, but I am hoping to see some wrinkles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so it's
situational
really
stuff,
exciting.
right? It's the situational stuff that I think drove the Ravens fans most
Where
crazy.
like we know at home exactly what's about to happen. Tony Rose saying it on TV.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the other team knows what's about to happen. So like that's
Which,
what
by
you're
the way,
I'm assuming, right?
yeah, exactly. But a quick side note on Tony Romo, he seems to be so, and yeah, I love watching him do the broadcast. I think he tends to predict a lot of correct things. But I just so happened to rewatch the key moments from the final game at the old Cowboy Stadium when the Ravens shut them, closed the stadium, and LeRon McClain, who's going to be on our show at some point, had the big run. And when he threw two of the silliest balls up into center field, and who do you think went up and got both of them? Because I was just thinking, where was that smarts when he was on the field? Because he threw some of the two silly passes right into Ed Reed's waiting hands that he took back the other direction. And I'm thinking, where was all these smarts when you actually had the ball in your hands and
Well,
not?
I think the thing about Tony is that he's a plenty smart guy, but as a quarterback, you have to trust your judgment over others, and sometimes you're just
I think I
not the
trusted.
smartest on the field.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? You get outsmarted. You're
avoid.
smart, and there's just another guy that's smarter, right?
That's right. I think I would have avoided Ed Reed, no doubt about it. But getting back to what your point was, when Patrick Queen had his rookie year here, where I think we all agree, he didn't have a perfect rookie year, but in less games, and he played in one less game, had more tackles, more sacks, more interceptions, more everything basically. And that year, Mike Macdonald was his position coach.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we can at least expect that Pat Queen will be happy to see Mike Macdonald returning. Now, of course, nothing's been finalized yet. It's just that it's expected to. Now, things could obviously change, but if things are expected to move in the direction of Mike Macdonald being the DC. But I'm excited. I mean, the situational stuff is what drove fans the most crazy. It wasn't the total body of work for Wink Martindale. But like you mentioned, how many fourth quarter leads did this defense end up blowing? And it's frustrating because here they'll hold a team to 7 or 10 points through the first three quarters, and then all of a sudden you look at the end and you see that they had 20 points, and you go, well, 20 points. If you look at as a big picture, you go, holding an NFL team to 20 points most of the time, you should get the win, especially when you have Lamar Jackson on the other side.
Right.
But if you look at it just in the sense that, well, yeah, but they didn't have anything through three quarters, or they only had 7 through three quarters. They got all 13 in the fourth. Then you start going, well, maybe there's something to this, and maybe the Ravens losing these leads while they're still at the end of the day only giving up 17 points. If 14 of those are in the last quarter, then maybe you do have a problem there, and maybe that problem is closing out games. And so hopefully we start to see some of those games be closed out, and we start to see some 4-man pass. Look, the one thing I will say about Wink is it's hard when you look and see we lead by far in blitz percentages, and we're middle of the pack in sacks. That's got to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me say this, Glenn. I'm going to go on the record because we kind of talked about this off air, but if you look at this pick, or excuse me, this hire, you can predict the future for a few other things. I'm going to say right now that the Baltimore Ravens will take it's David Adoju, I think is Adoju,
the other guy
like
had 11 sacks.
One of those two will be taken by the Baltimore Ravens.
Well, Hutchinson's probably not going to even be close to being there because he's expected to be a top 5 pick.
We'll see. We'll see how once his sneaky athleticism comes out in the combine.
That's
or
true.
not, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Crafty
Crafty
metrics. yeah, those metrics seem to skew a guy's pick more than they should. But
Yeah.
one of those two, I think, will be around at 14. And if they are, I'm just telling you, I think the Baltimore Ravens end up nabbing one of these guys because they have particular intel. The other
Hmm.
thing is, and you talked about this off air. Jim is gone, right? I mean, why would he let his DC just walk out of the door?
After such success. I
Right.
mean, I think there's an unwritten rule that if a guy's getting a promotion, you let him go.
But
And
it's
that's
like a
certainly
quasi lateral move, right? I mean,
but pro to, you're going to pros, that's a promotion.
sure, but some pro coaches would like to get paid what some of these college coaches are getting.
Yeah, but not the coordinators. No, I
That's
see what
true.
you're saying though. Head
That's true.
coach, that might be a little linear.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that also makes sense why John got that extension. Because if I'm
Yeah.
Mike Macdonald, I'm going, man, how many times am I going to change my address? I mean,
Right.
here I'm in Baltimore in 2020, then I'm in Michigan 21, now I'm back in Baltimore 22. If John was still in his final year, he's probably thinking, well, what am I going to be in Wisconsin next year? Like what is it? So I think that also leads to the point of him being here and him ultimately getting the job because John got the extension.
But let's end it like this, Glenn. Where are you? Like, do you love it, like it, or hate it? Like, where are you in that spectrum, right? Like, of this hire? I feel like I'm closer to love it than I am to like it, but I'm in between the two.
Hmm.
Um, now that I've learned a little bit more about him, I'm getting more excited as I've done some intel myself. But where are you?
Yeah, I'm in the like it camp. I mean, I think the only way I would have been in the hate it camp is if they would have brought in some, older, recycled
Yeah, retread,
defensive
right?
coordinator. Yeah,
Like
that we've
Rob
seen.
Ryan.
Yeah, that would have bummed me out in a big way. Somebody that we've seen a million times, we know what to expect, and when the moment's at its biggest, that we know exactly what they're going to do. I'm excited about the potential this guy has. Now, the reason I'm not in the love it is because there's still the fear of the unknown. I mean, we
Yeah,
still don't exactly know what those changes will be, how comprehensive they'll be, and how successful he'll be at implementing those changes. But nonetheless, excited about the fact that we have a 34-year-old defensive genius taking over, which is what the fan base said. We want our genius. A lot of times they want it on the offensive side of the ball,
sure.
but they're getting on the defensive side of the ball. It sounds like a young defensive genius, which we're kind of waiting on that to be, because look, everything's in trends in the NFL. And right now it looks like the offensive young genius is the trend right now. Well, maybe this is the start of the defensive side, and maybe
Yeah.
we'll start to see some unique defensive schemes that we haven't seen in the past, because that's coming. I mean, it
Hmm.
just like it does on offense, it comes that same way on defense. And so I'm excited to see what this guy brings. I mean, it's certainly different knowing that he's a 30. He's going to be younger than some of the guys he's going to be coaching,
Yeah.
which certainly adds a different element. But it sounds like there's a lot of respect for this guy, and I'm excited to see what he's got.
Absolutely. And actually, very last comment here. Are there any concerns about the fact that the Harbaugh circle seems to be so small, right? Like between Jim and John, you got Roman, you got obviously this guy who, I mean, was more of an in-house guy, but like John isn't doing much as far as venturing out. Now I know that usually pans out, right? Like if you have special
Hmm.
information about a guy or you're privy to additional information, you want to use that to your advantage. But is there any concern that the circle is a little too small? Does that make sense?
No, yeah, absolutely it does. I mean, that's a big criticism of John, is that they
Hmm.
say, he only hires friends and he sticks with guys too long because of the loyalties he has away from football and not necessarily what's best for the team on the field and stuff like that. Look, I think that this guy was always in the plans of the Ravens, but when given an opportunity to go get in a promotion somewhere else, they allowed him to do so. So I think
Yeah.
that the plan was always to let this guy be the DC in waiting. But when they were unsure and Wink was kind of unsure of how long that wait would be, they kind of did the guy a favor by saying, you can go. And if a spot opens back up, you're going to be right at the top of our list. I'm not upset about it. It's something the Ravens have done at all. If you look in their history, let's see, in their 26-year history, they've always hired
Yeah.
they've always promoted from within when it comes to the defensive coordinator position. So this is certainly in line with what they've always done long before John was ever the head coach. This is something
Yeah.
that's been done when Billick was the coach, and even before him when Marchibroda was here. So I'm not that concerned. I mean, I thought that they would take a little more time,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like I
But
thought they
also to their
may.
benefit, I think, to lock it in, right?
Yeah, it's nothing wrong with getting it done early because this offseason's moving quick and you want to have your coaching staff ironed out. But did they even have time to do the interviews like they talked
I
about
know
with
they
Joe
brought in
Witt?
Weaver,
Well,
and
he was already
they did do
here.
the other 2, yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to hear that they did their due diligence. But other than that, I mean, the guy's been here. He's really an internal candidate. I mean, he was here
Yeah.
from 2014 to 2020, spent one season away, and now he's back. So,
He just went on vacation.
yeah, I look at it as him being an internal candidate, and I'm excited to see what he's got. But yeah, let us know what you guys think.
Yep.
Were you stunned by the name? Were you kind of like, who is Mike Macdonald? Were you surprised to hear that he's just 34 years old? And are you like Jimmy said? Do you think that this is too small of a circle? I mean, really, it's really just the Greg Roman connection from a few years ago, and now this. It's not a ton, but if
I
that
mean,
can
same thing with even when Wink was here, and of course, we didn't go outside for that. Like, I just wonder if there's a concern about not doing enough as far as
like a total
pulling
rehaul.
yeah, like pulling in enough outside resources outside of the people that you know.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I understand. But yeah, so let us know what you guys think to
Yep.
that as well. Leave it all in the comments below, and we'll talk soon.
See you.